Crazy Rich Humans, and today we talk real estate and tax.
Yeah, tax real estate is a big part of this tax bill, actually, that was announced recently. And yesterday, the family of Samsung came out to announce their plans to pay off this massive bill. First, a look at Korea's laws surrounding that. How much do you think inheritance tax is at the top bracket here in the country?
I wouldn't even have a clue.
Do you have an idea for Canada, by the way?
I wouldn't even have a clue.
It's like not my problem.
If you're talking about an inheritance tax. Do we need to define that first, or is it very self-explanatory?
Yeah.
It's simply money that you inherit from your parents or grandparents or a previous generation of your family?
Yeah, it might not even be family. It could be a friend or a stranger if they leave you in the will. It's not just money. It's all the assets that they might leave to you.
Right.
The first time I came across that was when my grandfather passed away, and he had in his will for all the grandchildren a set amount and some items as well sometimes. In the UK, though, there's quite a high threshold. I think it's about £400,000. So that would be like, I don't know, maybe yugok or something like that in Korean money that is tax-free. So,
up to that amount,
Yes.
you don't have to pay any taxes. Anything over, it gets put into brackets.
yes, and I think it's a general bracket
So
after that.
maybe £600,000 to £1 million, you get taxed 10%. £1 million to £1.8 million, you get taxed 14%. So like that.
Yeah, and there's been a whole controversy in the US about that inheritance tax because Joe Biden is trying to increase it for the higher brackets.
So back to your original question, the top bracket,
Yes.
I would guess somewhere around 50%.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, 40 to 50%.
Yeah, you're absolutely bang on. South Korea's rate is 50% at the top end. And that, though, maybe surprisingly, is second in the world.
Oh.
Second
Whoa.
highest in the world. Japan has the highest rate, slightly above 50%.
What is it there?
I believe just a bit above
100%.
We're getting it
Just
all.
have to donate it all to society.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so that means this tax bill, and I still haven't mentioned the figure though, is one of the highest ever globally in terms of inheritance tax. We are talking nearly $11 billion
Goodness, man.
tax. Yes.
Just
11
tax
billion.
alone.
Wait, so yeah, good point, Kate. 11 billion is not the amount inherited.
No, that's almost double. It's a little more than double because it includes some assets and shares. It's about $23 billion.
Okay.
And so almost half of that, $11 billion, more than 12 trillion Korean won,
Yeah.
is the tax bill alone. But nicely, the government has said you may pay it in installments.
Oh, nice.
So they have 5 years.
일시불요?
할부. I'll have 3 months 할부, please.
아니요, 6개월요.
And so, no, but it has boiled down to that. Their first payment is due this Friday. That's why the news came out yesterday. How are they going to be paying off? Because that's an insane amount. It's not like they got this in cash.
Yeah.
They didn't get
No.
$23 billion in cash.
Right.
It's all shares, the estate in terms of property, it's art pieces as well.
Okay, so there's a lot to unwrap here. So you mentioned before, it's the Samsung family.
Yes.
So the younger members of the Samsung family, are we talking one person in particular? Are we talking a group of siblings? How is this broken up?
Yeah, this has been inherited, given to the children.
Okay.
So there's Lee Jae-young, who's currently in prison, and his sisters as well. I think it's 2 sisters.
So
right?
collectively, they have to come up with $11 billion?
Yeah, and so it's not a bill put on any one of them, I believe. It's just the whole estate, as we'd say in Korean, 통째로, the whole thing is being taxed at that rate, right? And so this Friday is the first installment, and people were like speculating, how are they going to get this money? Because even for people who are that wealthy, if it's in stocks and it's in shares and it's in estate, how are you going to get the money to pay the government? They're not going to accept, here's the keys to one house, or here's a sports car.
Yeah, right. So they have to liquefy a lot of assets very quickly.
But they can't even do that unless they're inherited, whatever, for them to even have ownership to liquefy whatever assets that are given to them.
So explain, please.
Because, it's still, it's going to be inherited to them when they pay that tax.
Oh, it's not theirs yet.
For them to freely liquefy, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I believe there are many complications here because they don't want to give up control of these companies in terms of the stocks and shares as well.
Okay.
So they don't want to liquefy that. So what they're basically doing for Friday's payment, apparently experts have said, is they are getting loans from the bank to pay off this inheritance tax, the first installment.
I heard their loan was like 1,000억 or something like that.
Which is...
How much is it? 1,000억? $100 million.
Goodness me.
Yes. So I'm sure they're getting a decent interest rate. But yeah, the first installment is going to be that. There's also some other really interesting things that they're doing to pay off the rest that we can get onto a bit later.
Well, we know what their answer to our here's what I think question of the day.
What would you do?
Someone from the Samsung family can text into the program and say, well,
I
it would
need
go
to pay
towards...
my tax.
Seriously. The family members of Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Gun-hee are expected to... No, they have to pay... That's been decided, right? This isn't a discussion.
No, it's by the letter of the law.
More than 12 trillion won. That's almost $11 billion in inheritance taxes on his estate. Like Pete said before the break, that's the highest number in the world that we know about, or nearly.
It's definitely the largest in Korea's history, and globally it's expected to be one of the biggest payments in tax ever.
Unbelievable. So, okay, we need to talk about a lot of things. Are the members of the family trying to fight this at all?
No, they did release a statement yesterday, and they said, as provided for under the law, the family plans to pay the full amount of inheritance tax over a period of 5 years, starting in April 2021. And so it's 2 trillion this Friday. 2 trillion, just throwing around these numbers.
That's gonna be a bad day.
Yes.
Usually
that
Friday
check.
is one of the better days of the week. Not this week.
No, and then in the subsequent annual installments that they'll have to pay, it's expected that they'll use a lot of the stock dividends. You know, I do also own some of the electronic shares, and I get a decent dividend. They must get way more than that, and they're going to use that to pay off the rest of the tax bill.
I see.
But the other interesting aspect of what they've announced is that they are going to be donating approximately 2 trillion won, $1.8 billion worth of art from Lee Gun-hee's collection, the late Lee Gun-hee. It's got all sorts in there, pieces from Salvatore Dali, Claude Monet, Pablo Picasso, Marc Chagall, and they're donating it to museums in Korea and other public organizations.
Will that go against the amount that they owe in the inheritance tax, or is that just kind of a goodwill thing they're doing?
If they do that, it means they don't have to pay inheritance tax on that value.
Oh, so that gets minused from the... Oh, okay, got it, yep.
Yeah, and also they've donated, just as a payout, 1 trillion won, $900 million in cash to build South Korea's first infectious disease center to treat rare disease patients.
Okay.
And so this has been seen, cynical people will say it's just to reduce the tax bill. And obviously that helps, but it's helping society in a massive way.
Yeah.
It is. There's no questions, because it's lessening the amount of the assets, right? Which will lessen the amount of tax that they have to pay. But I mean, they could go about this in some various ways, I'm sure. So if they're doing something that gives back to society somehow, it's tough to really get mad at them for that, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's kind of like going along with Chairman E, the original Lee Gun-hee, who said, we have to help upgrade the health and quality of life of all human beings. He said that back in May 2010. He had that kind of philosophy when he took over the company in the late 80s as well. So they're seeing that as a kind of legacy. Obviously, it's not ideal at the moment because Lee Jae-yong is in prison, found guilty of that corruption. But even with that, I don't know, the way that I interpreted it was he wasn't happy about the decision, but he kind of took it, and he's going to be in prison for X amount of time, a year and a half or something like that.
Was this this couldn't have been a surprise to the family, was it? Because this is a law that's in place, and it applies to everyone, even though not everyone is going to be in the upper tax bracket, highest tax bracket of inheritances. But
of course,
they saw this coming, did they not?
Yeah, I'm assuming that all wealthy families have a plan in place, but it was unexpected when Lee Gun-hee went into a coma. That was a good few years ago, right? That was quite sudden. No one expected that. And then, his death in the past, 6 months or so, was also expected. And there was a bit of talk about he was being kept alive by doctors and artificially, and a lot of people were wondering if that's trying to sort out what is going to happen with this inheritance. Is there any way to make this more streamlined? Because it does seem rather inefficient if I was the head of a family losing half of that wealth, from a wealthy person's point of view.
What do you mean it seems rather inefficient?
Like there are, in the UK, I know for a fact that if you donate money to your children, right, if you die within 7 years, you have to pay inheritance tax.
Yeah.
But if you don't, so you donate it when you think you've got more than 7 years to live, there's no inheritance tax. That's just a gift.
Okay.
Because, and also with this, I was thinking, right, if this goes to your spouse, I think there are exceptions there. There's more of a higher level untaxed, right? But then when your spouse passes away, there's more inheritance tax. Would you not just donate it to like your youngest member of your family, like your great-grandchild or something?
So when you say that this wasn't done in the most efficient manner, you mean by the family members who should have known that this was coming and maybe they could have put a better plan in place? Is that what you mean? It's speculated, of course.
I'm guessing it was very unexpected, the going into a coma and the death there. I don't know. And then with the current regime, the government here, it's more like spreading wealth to the people. It's more of a left-sided government, so maybe that wasn't expected. Who knows? But it seems like this tax bill, it's hit the headlines all over the world. Like the BBC were reporting it, CNN as well.
Yeah.
Because even the wealthy and rich there, when they pass away, they have plans in place. They've got offshore this and that and whatnot, and they don't pay billions upon billions, it seems.
And this is, it's an astronomically high number, $11 billion or whatever the 12 trillion won.
You've been losing track.
I don't even think I've said that word before.
Sure.
12 trillion won. But this is half the estate.
Yes.
This is half of the estate, the entire estate.
Of everything he owned, shares, the art is all going pretty much. It's 23,000 pieces.
Yeah.
I wonder, who are some of the artists you mentioned again?
There's Dali, there's Monet, there's Marc Chagall, there's Picasso.
Wow.
There's unbelievable works in this collection.
I mean, you said the Center for Disease Controls are going to open, but I mean, they could open a museum.
Yeah, they're
by the
donating
sounds of things.
a lot to the museums in Korea and other organizations. So hopefully this will mean it will be on more public display for more people to see. They've also owned their own art gallery, don't forget, which is fantastic.
What is the general reaction, if any, from the public here in Korea? Is the internet saying anything about this, or is there anything even to say about it?
Well, that's the thing, because they haven't come out and said, we're not going to do this, we're not paying this.
They've said, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, there's not too much to grab onto, People who are totally for the wealthy paying more taxes are just like, well, that's what should be done. And then the people who are against it, well, the family aren't against it, so what are you going to say, right?
I was going to wrap this up by saying, luckily, I'll never have to deal with this, but I don't think I'd mind having to deal with something like this in my own personal life.
Perhaps, right? Yeah, maybe it'd be a good problem to think about.
Take half of my $25 trillion. It's okay.